Deku's journey in the Demon Slayer era continues. With Shinobu, Nezuko, and Mitsuri by his side, what challenges await? Let's find out. I guess this is a temporary goodbye, said the green-haired boy looking at his best friend. From what I see, yes, Tanjiro answered, looking at the green-haired boy. The two young people looked at each other for a few seconds, then hugged each other like the good friends they are. They did so for a few seconds, then separated. Take care Tanjiro and take care of Nezuko-chan, he said while extending his fist. Same here, take care of Eri-chan, Tanjiro said, as he bumped his fist into the green-haired boys, while looking at Eri, who just smiled. Goodbye Uncle Tanjiro. Eri said goodbye with a tender smile. Goodbye Eri, be good to your father. Tanjiro said goodbye, to which Eri nodded. After that farewell, both boys took different paths, each heading towards their first mission. Current chapter. You could see in Izuku, who was walking while next to him, there was a dangerous girl, who was holding her father's hand. Both had been walking for 10 minutes, it would seem that that village was somewhat far away. You could see in Izuku, who was walking while next to him, there was a gray-haired girl, who was holding her father's hand. Both had been walking for 10 minutes, it would seem that that village was somewhat far away. Another 5 minutes of walking passed, until they had finally arrived at the village. Izuku saw that the village was somewhat large, so he and Eri headed towards the village. In the village, some villagers looked at Izuku with fear, since in their point of view he looked intimidating. Others were happy and a little strange by the clothes the green-haired boy was wearing, but they did not take it seriously. The only thing that mattered to them was that there was finally a hunter, so that he could finally finish off the band of demons. Well, we are already in the village, but there is a problem, said the green-haired man with a serious look. And what would that problem be? Eri asked doubtfully. The problem would be where the group of demons is hiding, the green-haired man answered, while examining the area. And why don't you ask the villagers, maybe they know where they have seen the presence of demons the most, suggested the little girl looking at her father. Good idea, maybe they know something about the group of demons, let's ask and see what they tell us. Izuku finished, then started walking, while Eri took his hand. An hour had passed, during which both of them asked where they had seen the group of demons, but they only told them that they did not know, since the group usually appears in random places, so it would not be known correctly where they appear most often. Right now there was a thoughtful Izuku, while next to him was Eri, who was also thoughtful. This will be a problem, if the villagers don't know where the group of demons appear most often, then finding them will be difficult. The only thing we can do is wait for nightfall, for now we have to wait, said the green-haired man. After saying that, Izuku offered Eri to play, to waste time. Obviously the little girl accepted with a smile. They walked for 10 minutes, until they reached an area, which seemed to be empty. Izuku, upon noticing this, took a deflated ball out of the backpack he was carrying. After taking the ball out, Izuku proceeded to inflate it. It didn't take long for him to inflate it, and then he saw father and daughter playing happily. An hour passed, during which they both had a lot of fun, but their fun would be stopped by a voice they heard. Oh, they look like father and daughter, said a female voice. Izuku and Eri, upon hearing that voice, turned their gaze. When they turned their gaze, they saw a short girl, who was standing on the roof of a house. The girl had black hair with purple streaks and purple eyes. Izuku, upon seeing her, felt like he had already met her and with Eri. Well, she didn't know who he was, but seeing the katana he was carrying, she assumed he was another hunter. Ara, you are the boy we saw in the test, said the girl, then appearing in front of the green-haired boy. The girl only looked at the green-haired boy from head to toe. Izuku, seeing the girl's action, got a little nervous because of her proximity. The green-haired boy said with some nervousness. I know you are the girl who accompanied Tita Miyaka-san in the test. If I'm not mistaken your name is Shinobu Koucho, right? Asked the freckled boy, waiting for the girl to move away from him a little. Asking that question, the girl moved away from Izuku a little, who let out a sigh of relief. Wow, it seems you still remember your friend Izuku-san, Shinobu said with a smile, but in that Shinobu managed to see a girl, who hid when she noticed that the girl was looking at her. Izuku, noticing how his daughter hid in his leg and clung to her, spoke. Come on Eri-chan, don't be nervous, say hello, Izuku said looking at Eri. Saying that, the little girl shyly separated from Izuku's leg. After doing that, the little girl introduced herself. Hello, nice to meet you, I'm Eri M. Midoriya. I'm Otosan's companion, Izuku Midoriya. She introduced herself shyly. Shinobu was surprised when he heard the little girl's last name, since Izuku was too young to have a daughter, but when she heard that she was his companion, she looked at him annoyed, which made Izuku nervous. "How dare you bring your sister, don't you know that you'll put her in danger?" Shinobu scolded, looking at Izuku, who just lowered his head in shame. After scolding the green-haired boy, Shinobu focused his gaze on Eri. "Don't worry, little one, we'll find someone to take care of you." To Izuku's surprise, the freckled boy could tell that Shinobu had awakened her maternal side for a few moments, since the way she acted with Eri was quite similar to that of a mother. Shinobu finished her sentence by caressing Eri's hair, but at one point, she moved the little girl's hair to the side, causing a small horn to be revealed, which was a little big. Shinobu, noticing this, was quite surprised, and without anyone noticing, she began to unsheath her sword. Shinobu thought that no one had seen her take out her sword. That's what she thought. "Why are you drawing your Nichirinto?" Eri asked innocently. Shinobu, upon noticing that she had been discovered, was surprised, since the little girl had excellent eyesight. Izuku, who was watching everything, was alert in case Shinobu would attack Eri. Shinobu, who was still surprised, still launched herself at a surprising speed, to try to inject poison using insect breathing, but before the sword even touched Eri. Her wrist was held by Izuku, causing the sword to be a few centimeters from Eri's face. Shinobu was surprised by the green-haired man's reaction, since she literally hadn't noticed when the freckled boy had moved, but what did surprise Shinobu was that Eri was calm. It seemed like she already knew that Izuku was going to stop her. But what left Shinobu in shock was seeing how Eri's horn began to glow yellow and seeing how the little girl touched the tip of her sword without fear or dread. Shinobu could see how her sword, which had a rather peculiar design, since the sword was small except for the tip and the hilt, was surrounded by a yellow aura. Shinobu saw how her sword slowly began to rust, to the point of having a light orange color combined with a dark brown. Shinobu, noticing that she was cornered, did nothing but accept her defeat. "You better have a good explanation, Izuku-san," Shinobu said with her peculiar smile, but some veins were noticeable on her forehead because she was angry. "Calm down and believe me, I have a good explanation," said the green-haired man as he gently released the girl's wrist. 5 minutes later. We can see a green-haired man, who was drinking water, because he had told him why Eri had a horn. Obviously everything he told him was made up, since it was not yet the right time to reveal where Eri's power really came from. Shinobu, upon hearing Izuku's explanation, was ashamed, since she was practically about to kill an innocent person. The girl honestly apologized to Eri, and the little girl accepted Shinobu's apologies with a smile. "Shinobu-san." Eri spoke, causing the aforementioned to turn to look at her. "Can you give me your Nichirinto?" she asked. Shinobu was surprised by that question, but the girl still gave her Nichirinto. To put it simply, the sword was in a rather deplorable state. It even seemed like it would break if one tried to cut something quite simple. But leaving that aside, Shinobu saw that Eri's horn had started to shine again. The next thing the pillar saw surprised her greatly. The pillar could see how its sword had been surrounded by that yellow aura, and then it could be seen how the sword began to take on the same appearance as it had before. A few seconds passed, until finally the sword had regained the same appearance it had before. After Eri rewound Shinobu's sword, the little girl just handed her sword to the pillar. "Thank you." Shinobu thanked. After things were settled, Eri's stomach began to growl, implying that the little girl was hungry. Curiously, Izuku's stomach had also growled. Izuku, noticing that, offered Eri to eat whatever. The little girl accepted quite happily. Apart from that, Izuku invited Shinobu. Upon hearing the green-haired man's invitation, Pilar thought about it for a few seconds until she finally accepted. 7 hours later. 7 hours had passed. During that time the three of them had a good time. Shinobu managed to get to know Izuku better, realizing that he was a friendly, shy boy and he was not perverted. Another thing that had to be emphasized was that Shinobu was starting to like bothering the freckled boy. Since during the 7 hours, the girl did mischief to the green-haired boy, such as hugging him, taking the green-haired boy's hand by surprise, there was no more to say that Izuku turned quite red, while Shinobu was just amused by the reactions Izuku had. Leaving all that aside, night had fallen and now we can see 3 people walking with a serious look, since the group of demons was already prowling around the village. "And tell me, Shinobu-san, why did you come to this village? I mean, I don't think you came just to see us, did you?" The green-eyed man asked seriously, while looking around in several places. "Well, answering your question, did you hear your crow tell you that a person would accompany you?" Shinobu asked, to which Izuku nodded. "The person who would accompany you would be me. Saying that, Izuku was surprised. Wow, and I thought it would be someone else. Said the green-haired man, scratching the back of his head. But, why did they send a pillar instead of another hunter? Izuku asked doubtfully. The reason why they sent me, instead of another hunter, is because it is rumored that in this village there is a demon belonging to the 12 demonic moons. Shinobu explained, but instead of clearing up Izuku's doubts, she only made him have more doubts. 12 demon moons? The green-eyed man asked, confused. Exactly. Wait, you don't know who the 12 demon moons are? Shinobu asked, to which Izuku shook his head with some shame. Well, you see, the 12 demon moons are. Shinobu couldn't finish, as she was held by the waist just like Eri, since underneath them a kind of holes opened, from which 3 hands came out, which were going to hold the 3, but thanks to the fact that Izuku managed to notice, the green-haired man jumped back. After that jump, the green-haired man fell along with Eri and Shinobu. Are you okay? The broccoli boy asked, somewhat worried. We're fine. Shinobu answered, a little blushing, due to the sudden grab of the broccoli boy. After that, Izuku put down both women. I'm glad to hear that, but now, be alert, we don't know where they might appear from. The green-eyed man finished seriously. In that, below them, those holes appeared again, and like the last time, 3 hands came out, which tried to grab the 3, but the 3 dodged the grab without problems. Izuku just stood in a pose while closing his eyes. While doing this, the green-haired man took the hilt of his sword to start inhaling air. Throughout the area, the sound of boiling lava began to be heard, coming from Izuku, who made the sound by expelling air from his mouth. The next thing Izuku did surprised Shinobu quite a bit. Lava breathing, second stance, burning ground. Saying that, Izuku opened his eyes, then unsheathed his sword, and with superhuman strength, the green-haired man buried his sword in the ground, causing the ground to crack a little. After Izuku had buried his sword in the ground, Shinobu saw that Izuku's sword had begun to generate lava, which was seeping through the ground. The pillar was more than surprised by that ability. But then, screams could be heard all over the area. The screams came from the 3 holes, which were glowing orange, indicating that the lava had reached all 3 holes. At that, 3 demons came out of the 3 holes, all of which had serious burns, but they were healing due to their regeneration. Damn them. They will pay for that, exclaimed the first demon, who had some burns that were healing. Izuku thought they were all the demons, but he was surprised to see that behind the 3 demons came out another 3 demons, only these ones were taller. This will be interesting. Shinobu, take care of the 2 tall demons, I'll take care of the 3rd and the other 3 demons. Izuku said, while activating one for all at 5%. Fine, but do you think you can handle 4 demons? The girl asked, with some concern for the freckled boy. Don't worry about me, I'll be fine, for now we have to focus on our mission. Izuku replied, while giving her a smile, which calmed the girl down a little. After both finished, the 2 of them shot off at high speed, while Eri, with the help of her quirk, made a dirt path for both boys to climb up the ground that the little girl created. Thanks to the training that Izuku had given her, Eri was able to mutate her quirk, to the point of being able to create fairly resistant walls and pillars of stone or earth. Izuku, when climbing the path that Eri made, jumped and then launched a smash, causing the demons to separate. After launching his smash, the green-haired man landed in front of the first 3 demons, who launched themselves at the green-haired man once he landed. Izuku easily dodged the attacks, so the latter also decided to attack, but would finish him off in a single attack. Well, if they've finished attacking me, now it's my turn. After saying that, the demons began to notice that the temperature of the place was slowly increasing, and noticing that the increase was due to Izuku's sword, the 3 demons could only listen. Lava breathing, 3rd posture, volcanic tornado. Saying that, the demons could see how Izuku began to spin in circles, to the point that he formed a small lava tornado. Slowly the demons began to be attracted. The demons, realizing this, tried to escape, but it was useless, since even if they tried to escape, the tornado exerted more force. And without the demons being able to do anything, they were swallowed by the tornado, and from one moment to the next, the demons were expelled from the tornado with their heads cut off. When they were expelled, the lava tornado broke up, revealing Izuku. Izuku saw that the demons were in a rather deplorable state, since when they were expelled, their bodies had 3rd-degree burns. Slowly the bodies of the demons began to disappear, until they left no trace. Well, that will be enough. Izuku couldn't finish, because he had received a blow, coming from the 4th demon, who had taken advantage of the green-haired man's distraction. With Shinobu. Shinobu was fighting with the 2 demons that Izuku told her about. She saw something come out. When she looked closely, she saw that it was Izuku. Izuku? The girl asked, recognizing who the person who had flown away was. That boy will be a problem, we must finish him off. The sixth demon could not finish, because he had received several bites all over his body. Insect breathing, first butterfly dance posture. After saying that, the girl had appeared behind the demon, who spat out a large amount of blood due to the poison. Damn you, exclaimed the demon angrily. Shinobu, hearing that, just turned around to give him a not very friendly look. You demons are despicable beings who do not deserve to live, said the girl in a cold tone. Insect breathing, third posture dragonfly dance. And with that said, the demon received 6 hits in its vital points, which caused it to spit blood again, and in the end it fell dead, due to the excessive poison it had received in its vital points. With Eri. The little girl, who was watching Shinobu kill the 6th demon, was not scared at all. Normally, for a normal child this would be a 100% sure trauma, but with Eri, things were different. Because Eri did not possess strength that was comparable to that of a hunter, Izuku taught her several skills that she could use, using her quirk. But apart from training her, Izuku also trained her mentally, to prevent the little girl from getting scared when she saw blood or some rather grotesque scene. Leaving that aside, the little girl had her little hands on the ground in case a demon would attack her, but then a 7th demon, which was hidden, came out of hiding when he saw that the little girl was distracted. Shinobu, who saw everything, was about to run out to save her. But she was petrified when she saw how a rather thick pillar of earth had pierced the demon's chest, which spat out blood, and then, its head was crushed by 2 pillars of earth. You demons are stubborn as well as predictable, Eri said seriously, then approached the demon's body and put her hand on it. At that, Eri's horn began to glow, and then the demon's body was seen being surrounded by a yellow aura, and it was seen how it became smaller and smaller, to the point of leaving no trace of the demon, all seen by a shocked Shinobu. How was it possible for a girl of about 7 or 8 years old to do such a thing? Shinobu asked herself mentally. Back with Izuku. After Izuku received that blow, he stood up, while he wiped the little blood that came out of his lip, and then smiled defiantly. Well, looks like I'll have to get a little serious, Izuku said, as he picked up his sword, which he had dropped. After saying that, Izuku raised the percentage of his full cowl, up to 10%. At that, the 5th demon appeared in front of the green-haired man. Izuku, upon seeing him, was surprised, since this demon should be fighting with Shinobu, but apparently the demon had chosen better, to go against him. But still, Izuku jumped, managing to dodge the blow that the demon was preparing. Without wasting time, Izuku appeared in front of the demon, then hit him in the cheek and finished with a powerful blow to the stomach, which caused the demon to retreat a few meters. You're not a bad hit, kid, said the 5th demon, who had recovered after receiving the blows from the freckled man. To Izuku's surprise, the 4th demon appeared behind him, who was ready to give him an axe kick, but Izuku only dodged it, and then cut off the demon's arm, who couldn't react, causing him to end up receiving the cut. After having cut off the demon's arm, Izuku took his distance and then spoke. Eri is right, you demons are stubborn and predictable. He finished, then started to run towards the 4th demon, who stood on guard, ignoring the pain. To the 4th demon's surprise, he saw Izuku disappear from his sight. Where the hell is it? The 4th demon asked with annoyance. The demon looked around for the green-haired man, but couldn't find him, until he heard a Detroit smash. The demon, upon hearing that, raised his head, and all he could see was Izuku, who gave him a tremendous blow to the face, causing the demon to be stuck in the ground. Izuku, without wasting any more time, proceeded to use lava breathing again. Lava breathing, 4th posture, lava drops. After saying that, Izuku waved his sword, causing drops of lava to begin to fall from his sword, which upon touching the demon's skin, made him give a horrible scream, as he felt his skin slowly cooking. But at that, Izuku heard a careful coming from Shinobu. Izuku, hearing that, turned around. Serious mistake. Izuku was hit by a wooden stick, causing the freckled boy to be thrown out and end up crashing into an abandoned house, destroying it in the process. Shinobu, noticing this, launched herself against the 2 demons with the help of Eri, who had created some pillars to hold both demons, which had not noticed in time. Now Shinobu-san, Eri exclaimed. Shinobu, hearing Eri's words, jumped slightly, then said the following. Insect breathing, 2nd posture, bee sting. After saying that, Shinobu buried her sword into the 4th demon's chest, causing the demon to spit out blood. Damn you wretch. The demon exclaimed, quite annoyed. To Shinobu's surprise, the demon managed to free his right arm from the pillar that held him, and in a quick movement, the demon hit Shinobu, who by pure luck managed to cover herself in time, but because of that blow, it caused the girl to be stunned and she dropped her sword, leaving it in the demon's chest. The other demon, noticing this, used more force, thus managing to free himself from the pillars that held him. "Brother, are you okay?" the fifth demon asked with obvious concern. "I'm fine," the fourth demon replied. "Go and finish her off once and for all." After saying that, the fifth demon made a move. From one moment to the next, the demon's right hand had transformed into a stone pillar, which implied that the demon had a blood demon technique. The demon, without wasting time, launched himself against Shinobu to finish her off. Die, the demon screamed, standing a few centimeters away from Shinobu, who had recovered from her daze, but upon seeing the demon near her, she simply closed her eyes, waiting for the attack. Before the stone pillar even touched Shinobu, the demon had received a blow to its stomach, causing it to be thrown out and crash into some rocks that were there. Shinobu, noticing that nothing had happened, slowly opened her eyes, seeing a green-haired boy, who had his right fist extended, which could be seen to be surrounded by those red marks. "I'm glad you arrived on time," Izuku said, then let out a small sigh of relief and looked at Shinobu. "Are you okay?" he asked with concern. When the girl saw Izuku, she was happy, but she was a little worried when she noticed the wounds he had. "I'm fine, but what happened to the demo?" she could finish, since when she turned to the right, she saw the fourth headless demon. Without Shinobu noticing, Izuku had cut off the demon's head, which he hadn't even noticed. "I'm glad you're okay, now let me take care of it," said the freckled man, then turned around and looked at the demon. And without further ado, Izuku launched himself at the demon, who recovered after having crashed into those rocks. The demon, seeing that Izuku was coming at full speed, covered himself, ready to receive the green-haired man's attack. But once again, Izuku disappeared from the demon's sight, which became alert. And without being able to react, the demon received an axe kick to his head from Izuku. The demon slowly began to see blurry, which implied that the blow had left him unconscious. Before he fell unconscious, he heard some words. "Water breathing, second posture, water wheel." And with that said, Izuku cut off the demon's head, thus ending the group of demons once and for all. "We did it," Shinobu said happily. "Why, yes we did," were Izuku's last words, before falling to the ground. Shinobu and Iri, seeing Izuku, approached with noticeable concern. When both girls arrived where the green-haired boy was, Shinobu took Izuku, then put him on her lap and proceeded to see his condition. After Shinobu examined the green-haired boy's condition, Shinobu came to the conclusion that Izuku had not fallen unconscious, but had fainted from exhaustion, and that if he rested, he would be fully recovered. 1 hour later, we found ourselves in an abandoned cabin, in which there was a Shinobu, who walked around the cabin from one place to another with a noticeable concern, being seen by an Iri, who looked strangely at the attitude of the pillar. "Could you calm down a bit, Shinobu-san? My father is too strong, it would be quite difficult for anyone to defeat him," explained the little girl, trying to calm the pillar, who was still worried about the green-eyed man. "I know Iri-chan, but he protected me without asking for anything in return, so it is my duty to also worry about him, even though we have barely met," said the girl, who blushed a little remembering how the freckled boy worried about her. On one hand, Iri was happy that someone else cared about her father, but the thought of another mother joining them crossed her mind. After all, she was still a child with an innocent mindset. A few minutes passed, until both girls began to hear the sounds of footsteps coming from the room where Izuku had been left to rest. Little by little the footsteps began to intensify, until a green-haired man emerged from the room, his hair a little messy. Yum, what a good nap," Izuku said while yawning. After that yawn, Izuku turned his gaze. When he turned his gaze, he saw Shinobu and Iri. The green-haired man was about to say something, but he had been pulled by both women. "I'm glad you're okay," Iri said happily. "Sorry for worrying you," Izuku said, while stroking Iri's head, "although I didn't expect Shinobu-san to hug me too." Shinobu, who was on the green-haired boy's chest, blushed upon hearing the boy's words. "Sorry if this bothers you," said the girl, waiting for the boy to push her away, but instead she received a hand on her head. "It doesn't bother me, besides, just by hugging me, I know that you were also worried about me, and I appreciate that," Izuku said with a smile, while a small blush accompanied his face. Shinobu, hearing that, separated herself slightly from the green-haired boy's chest, and then said, "That means, do you like us being in this position? The girl asked with a playful smile. Izuku, upon hearing that, could only blush. Well, if you like us like this, it's no problem with me. Without Izuku realizing it, he had given a twist to the girl's joke, which went from a playful face to a somewhat blushed one. We better go. Shinobu said, dumbfounded, seeing how the boy had innocently counterattacked her without realizing it. After the hug, Izuku and Eri said goodbye to Shinobu, who did the same. Before leaving, Izuku had invited her out to eat as a thank you for helping him with the mission. The girl blushed at the green-haired man's proposal, but with a true smile, she accepted. After the farewell, Izuku's crow had arrived, which informed him that there was a demon in another village located in the north, which was taking children, more specifically, newborns. It had also informed him that it would take at least a day if he just walked. After the crow told him Izuku's mission, the green-haired boy got excited, since it was his second mission, and without further ado Izuku and Eri headed towards their next mission. It must be said that it was still nighttime. After a few hours, they finally arrived at the village. It took them about a day to find the location of the demon, if it weren't for the people of the village, who gave information, so that Izuku could find the demon as soon as possible. We can see a freckled man and a gray-haired woman, who were in front of a cabin, which was somewhat far from the village, as well as being abandoned. Okay Eri, I'll go into the cabin. In case the demon wants to escape, use your power and create a wall, to prevent it from escaping, okay? He asked the last thing, to which Eri nodded. After that, Izuku silently entered the cabin. The freckled boy carried his sword in case the demon attacked him by surprise. After walking, Izuku had reached a room in the cabin. When he opened it he got a huge surprise. Izuku could see a somewhat small demon, which at first glance looked weak, but it had long nails, which were sharp. In addition to being resistant at first glance, Izuku saw that the demon had approximately 20 newborn children. These were covered in a kind of green saliva. Something that displeased Izuku too much was seeing how that demon was licking the cheek of a child, who was crying. Izuku had seen worse things in his life, but seeing this was the last straw. After the demon dropped the infant on the ground, the demon was held by its head, and then slammed against the wall of the cabin by Izuku, who was using 20% of One for All. Again, Izuku slammed the demon's head against the wall, only this time with more force, which caused the wall to be destroyed this time. Even so, Izuku crashed it into the ground this time. The green-haired man was ready to finish him off, but he noticed something. And it was that the demon's head had exploded, due to the force that Izuku exerted when the demon's head crashed into the ground. But apart from that, the green-haired boy was stained with blood. In a way Izuku disliked having that blood on his hero suit. After doing that, slowly the sun's rays began to rise. Izuku did nothing but watch the demon's body disappear in the sun's rays. After the demon died, Izuku and Eri went to the village to report where the missing children were. When he told them where the children were, the villagers decided to give him a gift as a thank you, although Izuku refused and said it was not necessary, accepting this term due to the villagers' pleas. The women prepared his food, while others washed his hero suit, and they also prepared one of the most luxurious baths in the village. All of this made Izuku overwhelmed by receiving too many things. And so 5 days of pure comfort passed. Before the 6th day was up, Izuku left the village, but he didn't leave in a normal way. The green-haired man had to leave running, since several women wanted to go with him, with the excuse of feeling protected somewhere else. We found ourselves in a place where there were several medicine utensils, as well as being decorated with butterflies among other things. Apart from that, there was also a girl who was eating an apple. Why do I feel like Izuku-san is doing something stupid? A black-haired girl with purple locks asked herself, who squeezed her apple hard, causing it to explode, and her hand with which she was holding it was stained. He returned to Izuku. Izuku had received a new mission, which he found interesting, since he was informed that several hunters had died or disappeared on Mount Natagumo, and he had also been informed that there was a family of demons who lived on that mountain and who were also responsible for tormenting a village that was near the mountain. Therefore, his mission was to kill them. Finally, he was informed that it would take a week to arrive and that 3 boys would help him in the mission. After Izuku listened to his mission, he and Eri headed towards their 3rd mission. After a week, Izuku and Eri had arrived at the village, but the problem was that there was still sunlight, so they would have to wait until it was night. Right now Izuku was with Eri, who were walking, to waste time until it got dark. While they were walking, little Eri asked a question, which Izuku did not expect. Will we ever see Mommy Shinobu again? The little girl asked innocently. Izuku blushed after hearing the question, since he had literally not even known her for a week, and she already called her mommy, but she still answered. I don't know Eri, but most likely we will see her again, but I don't know if it will be early or late. Izuku answered. But you said you'd take her out to eat, so you have to keep your promise. He finished, making Izuku only turn redder. I know, Eri, but the problem is that I don't know how I'll do it, since she's a pillar, and I want to assume that she has more occupations. Said Izuku, trying to divert the subject, succeeding, since the little girl nodded at her father's answer. A few hours had passed, until finally night fell. Izuku was already ready to enter the forest, although the inhabitants of the village begged him not to go, since he could die, but Izuku only told them that he would be fine. Right now Izuku was standing in front of the forest, while next to him was Eri, but there was something that Izuku found strange. And it was that Izuku did not see the three boys who would help him in the mission. The green-haired boy was looking for them with his eyes, but he simply could not find them. Izuku, seeing that they didn't appear, decided to go inside with Eri. What Izuku didn't know was that he was on the other side of the forest. Once in the forest, Izuku drew his sword, in case a demon attacked them by surprise. While Izuku had his sword in the air, Eri was also on alert, ready to use her power. But there was something that kept Izuku worried. And if Eri was hurt, he would have to worry about her, while also having to deal with the demons. But suddenly, Izuku and Eri saw a boy fly away. Izuku, seeing that, became alert, and without saying anything, he took Eri by the hand, and then they both headed to the boy's location. Before they reached the boy's location, Izuku stopped, then turned to look at Eri. The green-haired boy simply crouched down to be at his height and said the following. Listen, Eri, if you see injured people in the forest, help them, but if you see a demon in the forest, ignore it. I don't want you to get hurt. After this is over, I'll come find you, okay? Explained the green-haired boy, looking at his daughter, who nodded to what her father told her. After that explanation, Eri went to the other side of the forest, while Izuku headed to the location of the boy who flew away. Upon arriving, Izuku saw something that surprised him. Izuku saw a muscular demon, who had features of a spider. He was fighting with an equally muscular boy, only this one had a peculiar boar head. The poor boy was receiving a beating from the demon, who had a huge advantage. Izuku, seeing how the boy was about to receive the coup de grace, shot out with the full cowl at 5%, to try to hit him, but what he didn't expect was for the demon to react. And without Izuku being able to cover himself, he received a blow to the stomach, causing the freckled boy to fly out and crash into a tree. Don't get in the way, idiot, shouted the boar boy, who appeared behind the demon, and without further ado, he launched a cut at the head with his two swords, but surprisingly the swords broke when they touched the demon's skin. The demon, upon noticing this, turned around, then grabbed the boar boy's head and gave him a strong headbutt, which caused the boy to fly away and crash into a tree. Suddenly, the demon received a blow to the cheek from Izuku, which raised his percentage up to 10%. The blow caused the demon to retreat while leaving him stunned. Izuku, seeing this, took the opportunity to carry the boar boy and jump, so he fell into a tree, which was somewhat far from the demon. Are you okay? The green-eyed boy asked worriedly, looking at the wild boar boy, who was being carried like a sack of potatoes. Put me down. I'm not weak for you to treat me like that, he replied, while trying to get away. Izuku, seeing the boar boy's sudden reaction, became somewhat nervous. Sorry, but can you continue? Izuku asked again, only this time he received no answer. It was more than clear that the boy was tired. The king must not get his hands dirty, you go. And with that simple answer, Izuku remembered a certain explosive boy. After hearing the boar boy's words, the freckled boy got down from the tree, then ran in the direction of the demon, who seemed to be looking for something. Izuku knew that something was them, and without further ado, Izuku appeared in front of the demon. Good, now we can play without being bothered, said Izuku, then activated his full cowl at 10% and launched himself against the demon. And to the demon's surprise, Izuku appeared in front of the demon, who couldn't react to the demon's speed, and then received a punch to the cheek, causing him to step back. The demon quickly recovered, and then launched himself at the green-haired man, who dodged the blow, and then dodged another blow from the demon. And so Izuku dodged all the demon's blows for a minute, until at a certain point, the green-haired man decided to counterattack. Izuku, seeing that the demon was about to throw another punch, dodged it and then gave him a powerful kick in the stomach, causing the demon to step back and be momentarily stunned. Izuku, seeing that the demon was stunned, decided to use one of his lava breaths. Lava breathing, fifth posture, volcanic eruption. After saying that, Izuku's sword began to release drops of lava, and then he buried his sword. When he buried his sword, the ground around the demon began to crack, forming a circle. Suddenly, The circle began to glow in an orange color combined with a crimson-red color. Suddenly, lava began to emerge from the circle, and eventually a huge torrent of lava came out, resembling a volcanic eruption. The heartrending sounds of the demon could be heard throughout the area, as he felt his skin slowly melting away. After the lava torrent stopped, Izuku saw the demon completely in a mess. The demon's skin had melted, and his hands had turned to ashes, leaving the bones of his arms exposed. Izuku, seeing the demon's state, wasted no time and launched himself to attack it, ready to use lava breathing. The demon, seeing this, covered itself with the bones of its arms, which were regenerating, but at a slow speed, since most of its regeneration was being used to restore the demon's skin, since the damage was too high. Izuku, seeing the demon's action, changed his breathing. Water breathing, 8th posture, waterfall lake. After saying that, Izuku launched a vertical attack, which caused the demon's hand bones to be easily shattered. After that, Izuku gave the demon a powerful blow to the jaw, causing it to be stunned again, something that Izuku did not waste. And with one cut, Izuku cut off the demon's right leg, then dealt a powerful blow to the demon's left leg with 15% of one for all. The demon simply fell to the ground, while screaming in pain. "You're too loud, shut up already." And with that said, Izuku cut off the demon's head, which couldn't do anything to avoid it, thus finishing off the demon. After Izuku cut off the demon's head, the demon's body began to slowly disappear. "Well, I've finished with the demon," Izuku said, while giving a sigh. Without Izuku realizing, everything had been seen by the boar boy, who was more than surprised, since he literally defeated him without problems, something that was impossible for the boar boy. "Will it be a pillar?" he asked himself mentally in his thoughts, but was quickly taken out when he heard the scream of what seemed to be a girl. When he returned his gaze to where the green-eyed boy was, he saw that he was no longer there. Shit. Eri. Where are you?" Izuku asked, upset and worried. To get a better view, Izuku climbed up a tree, then started jumping from tree to tree, until at a certain point, the green-haired boy stopped. Izuku stopped and saw something that shocked him. He saw an unconscious Nezuko, who was hanging from some kind of thread. In addition to being completely covered in blood, he also saw Eri, who was almost the same, except that she had some cuts, in addition to being wrapped in those threads as if she were a caterpillar. Slowly an anger was beginning to emerge within Izuku. The last thing Izuku saw made his anger increase enormously. Izuku saw a redhead, who was trapped in a small dome made of red threads, while in front of him was an albino demon, who was responsible for managing that dome. "Now die!" exclaimed the albino demon, then made a small movement with his hands, causing the small dome to begin to shrink. Tanjiro, seeing this, just closed his eyes waiting for his death, until he heard the sound of something being hit. Slowly the redhead opened his eyes, only to see a green-haired man, who had his fist embedded in the stomach of the albino demon, who spat out blood. The albino demon simply flew away, leaving a trail of destruction, and he simply ended up crashing into a tree. That blow that the albino demon received, came with 50% of the one for all. After that powerful blow, the dome that had Tanjiro trapped fell apart. There was nothing more to say than that Tanjiro was surprised and happy that his rival and best friend came to help him. Izuku knew that Tomioka was heading towards Tanjiro, since he could see him in the distance, but even if he went at a tremendous speed, he wouldn't arrive in time, so the green-haired man decided to go ahead and take out his anger in the process. Tomioka, who was heading towards Tanjiro, saw how a green flash shot out, and he saw how a freckled man landed a tremendous blow on the albino demon's stomach, and then the demon was thrown out and left a trail of destruction. Tomioka was surprised by the monstrous strength that Izuku showed. When the black-haired man saw that the situation was under control, he decided to simply observe, but in case things got out of control, he would intervene. After Izuku delivered that blow, a battle was about to begin. Izuku, the ninth bearer of One for All versus Rui, the Lower Moon 5. Tanjiro, seeing Izuku, was happy, but at the same time worried, since he didn't know if his friend could fight the demon that he couldn't defeat. He knew that Izuku was powerful, and Izuku had told him about how destructive One for All could be if it were controlled 100%. He didn't know if Izuku's power could stand up to the demon, so he would have to watch to see if One for All would stand up to him. No one spoke, no one made a move. The place was in complete silence, until it was broken by Izuku. "Rest, Tanjiro, I'll take care of the demon, then tell me what happened," Izuku said without turning to look at the redhead. Tanjiro, upon hearing Izuku's words, simply responded with a yes, but something that had to be emphasized was that Tanjiro was surprised to hear the way Izuku said it to him. Normally, Izuku is usually a peaceful, kind and cheerful person, but seeing him speak that way only made the elder Kamato feel that what was about to happen was not going to be anything good. With Rui. After Rui received Izuku's blow, he was standing up, but with difficulty, since the blow he had received hurt too much, but somehow, Rui managed to suppress the pain. Once his pain was suppressed, he turned his gaze to Izuku, who was looking at him with a cold and penetrating look. Feeling that gaze collide with his own, he felt a chill run down his back, but due to the anger he felt at that moment, Rui simply ignored that warning. Serious mistake. Another stupid hunter, one after another always has to appear, they are just ants, all they do is get in my way, Rui exclaimed angrily. Izuku didn't say anything about it, the green-haired boy simply had his gaze covered by his hair. Without further ado, Rui covered his hands with his blood, then said, "Blood demon technique, thread spinning wheel." After saying that, a reddish circle formed, while in the center another circle appeared, only smaller. And without further ado, Rui fired his attack towards Izuku. Quickly, the attack was approaching Izuku, who hadn't moved a muscle. And just before the attack hit Izuku, the green-haired boy stretched out his right arm, which surprised Rui, but the next thing that happened left him shocked and dumbfounded. Delaware smash. Izuku would say in a whisper. After saying that, a monstrous current of wind shot out from Izuku's fingers. And with enormous ease, the monstrous current of wind destroyed Rui's attack. Seeing that, Rui covered himself with his arms, putting them in an X shape, covering himself from the monstrous current of wind. Rui was more than shocked and stupefied to see how his attack was easily destroyed. Looking around, Rui saw several objects flying out of the monstrous air current, such as large rocks and normal-sized trees. Due to the monstrous wind current, Rui was retreating too quickly, and when he realized this, he simply planted his feet on the ground, managing to prevent him from retreating any further than normal. After Izuku launched that attack, Rui was still shocked. Rui didn't know how that boy had released a monstrous current of wind. He only had one question in his mind: how did he do it? After the monstrous current of wind stopped, Rui lowered his arms, only to see that Izuku was no longer in the same place. He began to look for him with his eyes, until he heard some words, which made him look up. St. Louis smash. Rui, hearing those words, raised his head upwards, only to see a green flash heading towards him. And without being able to do anything, Rui received Izuku's kick in the chest, causing him to fly away and crash into several trees, making them fall in the process. It should be said that this blow came with 65% of the one for all, which is why the lower moon was sent flying a long distance, accompanied by a trail of destruction. Tanjiro, who saw everything, was more than surprised, since literally, the one for all was facing the demon. Tanjiro did not even want to know what would happen if Izuku were to use 100% against the one who rules all the demons. What Tanjiro did not know was that Rui was equivalent to 15% of the one for all. Which means that perhaps there is a chance that the strongest demons can confront one for all at its maximum percentage. Rui was standing up, but with much more difficulty. He was quite angry and frustrated, since that boy was beating him with enormous ease. The fact of knowing that with two simple blows, they had left him weakened, this only made him more enraged. Once standing, Rui without thinking, launched himself at Izuku. Izuku seeing that, stretched out his right arm, stopping the punch that Rui was going to throw. Despite Izuku's serious expression, the freckled boy was surprised, since the punch that Rui had thrown was equivalent to 15% of one for all. Izuku supposed that perhaps, in the world he was living in, there was a possibility that he would encounter quite powerful demons that had the ability to confront one for all at its maximum power. But leaving that aside, Rui, noticing that his blow had been stopped, began to throw several punches, which were blocked by Izuku. While Rui was attacking Izuku, he accidentally left an opening open, which was taken advantage of by Izuku, who had stopped a blow that was aimed at his face. And without Rui reacting, he received a blow to the jaw, causing him to fly upwards. Followed by that, Izuku made a huge jump, which cracked the ground he was on. Once in the air, Izuku began to plummet towards Rui. The lower moon could only hear a simple phrase: smash. And with that said, Rui took the full force of Izuku's blow to his chest, causing the lower moon to crash into the ground, creating a normal-sized crater. After giving that smash, Izuku fell to the ground, then walked and approached the crater. When approaching the crater, Izuku saw that in the center of the crater was an almost dead Rui. Although his wounds would heal, he was already quite tired, since the blows that Izuku had given him were very powerful. Which made his regeneration have to heal several wounds, but because the wounds were very serious, it made his regeneration slower. On the other hand, Izuku saw that Rui was trying to stand up, only that it was already impossible for him to get up. And without further ado, Izuku jumped slightly, falling into the crater. Rui, upon hearing the sound of something falling, focused his sight on that noise, but what he saw made him feel a feeling that he had not felt for a long time. Fear. Fear was what Rui felt, seeing Izuku slowly approaching his location. The fact of seeing Izuku walk slowly with that cold and penetrating gaze made him feel enormous fear. Rui did not know how that boy had defeated him with a few blows. The lower moon only repeated in his mind, "What kind of power is that?" He repeated that question over and over again, until he heard Izuku's voice. "The blows could have been less powerful, but the fact that you have seriously injured Tanjiro and Nezuko and left my daughter injured, the price is very high," he said in a cold and serious way that made Rui feel much more afraid. In vain, Rui tried to escape, so to speak, but he literally couldn't move. His body was too tired to be able to move. Rui just wanted to leave. The lower moon felt that what was about to happen next was not going to be pleasant at all. And just as he felt, Rui heard some words that sentenced him. Lava breathing, sixth stance, 1,000 hellish cuts. After saying that, Izuku unsheathed his sword a little, then put it back in its sheath. Rui, noticing that nothing had happened, he simply thought that the technique had failed. Until several cuts appeared on his body, all over the area. A heartbreaking scream was heard coming from Rui, who had his skin melted, in addition to bleeding profusely. Rui just wanted to escape. He never wanted to meet the green-haired boy again who made him feel a fear that he himself couldn't explain. But before he made any move, the lower moon saw Izuku pass by him, and then heard some words that would end his life. "That's the price, for hurting my loved ones." And with that said, Rui felt his head was out of place. As he put his hands on his neck, he realized something. And it was that his head had been cut off. Izuku only saw how Rui's head fell to the ground, and then began to disintegrate. Izuku didn't say anything, other than just passing by and heading towards the exit of the crater. Once outside the crater, the green-haired man simply approached Tanjiro, who was more than impressed, but he was taken out of his trance when he heard the green-eyed man's voice. "Tanjiro, are you okay?" the green-eyed man asked, changing that serious look into one of concern. "I don't feel quite right, my body still hurts," the redhead replied. At that, an expressionless black-haired man appeared behind them. He had a small smile that was barely noticeable, but you had to get closer to his face to see it more clearly. "Well done, Izuku, you were able to defeat an inferior moon," said the black-haired man, still with his small smile. Wait, did you say lower moon? That means that what I was facing from the beginning was a lower moon?" he asked, intrigued and surprised. "That's right, Izuku, to be more exact you face the lower moon 5, and if you're wondering how I know, it's pretty simple. You can see it through its right or left eye, since there they have a symbol that says which lower moon it is, but when they are upper moons they will have two symbols in their two eyes," Tamika explained. "That explains why he had that written on his eye, although I couldn't read it well because it moved too much and prevented me from reading it. But what is the difference between a lower moon and an upper moon?" the green-eyed man asked, intrigued. "Well, you see, the difference is that a lower moon does not represent a danger to a pillar, but if it is a higher moon, this is already a huge danger to a pillar, since the possibility of emerging victorious is low. So we could say that this is the difference between a lower moon and a higher moon," Tamika explained, to which Izuku nodded. So what Izuku assumed was true, at some point, he would have to fight those demons. Izuku just looked at his right hand, then closed it and said the following in his thoughts. "I will control one for all as soon as possible and protect everyone." Accompanied by those words, Izuku showed enormous determination to master one for all as much as possible and use it to confront the upper moons. After that, Izuku remembered Nezuko and Eri, so the green-haired man asked Tamika if he knew where they were, since he didn't see them anywhere. To which the black-haired man replied that while he was fighting, he took the trouble to free them from the threads, and finally, Tamika said that he had left them near a tree. Izuku breathed a sigh of relief upon hearing the black-haired boy's words. Until he heard some words that surprised the freckled boy. "Leaving that aside, I wanted to tell you that you are more than ready to be a pillar and that you tell me, do you accept?" Tamika asked, making Izuku surprised. "Huh?" was the first thing that came to Izuku's mind, upon hearing Tamika's words. "Be a pillar?" To be honest, I wasn't expecting those words, but I'm afraid I have to reject that offer. "And could we know the reason?" Tamika asked, intrigued. "Well, it's simple, I feel like I'm not ready to be a pillar, plus there are better candidates other than me," Izuku said, then looked at a redhead, who was crawling, to go to a certain demon girl. If you say so, but I see you as the better candidate. After all, you have 2 breaths and that strange power, but well, it's your decision and I will respect it. If you excuse me, I will go see if there are more injured. And with that said, Tomioka was ready to leave, but before leaving, he was stopped by Izuku. Wait, Tomioka-san, could I ask you a small favor? He asked. What would that small favor be? The black-haired man asked, looking at the green-eyed man. Could you take Eri with you? She has injuries and right now I don't have anything to treat her, and I assume there are doctors in the area, Izuku explained. I understand, no problem. After all, I was going to head to the doctors, to see if everything is okay, so taking advantage of the fact that I will be there, I will leave her with the doctors to heal her wounds. Tomioka explained, to which Izuku nodded. After that, Tomioka walked over to an unconscious Eri, simply picked her up in his arms, and disappeared in a blur. Izuku, seeing how Tomioka disappeared in a blur, was going to go to Tanjiro to explain how he ended up in that state, but before approaching, the green-haired man felt something approaching, so he stood in front of Tanjiro, who looked confused at Izuku, who was going to say something. But at that, Tanjiro saw how Izuku unsheathed his sword, and then saw how Izuku blocked an attack from a sword that was only sharp at the tip. Following that, both boys saw a silhouette land in front of them. Ara? Asked a black-haired girl with purple locks. Why did you attack Tanjiro, Shinobu-san? Izuku asked, recognizing the figure. Actually, he wasn't attacking him, but her. He replied, pointing at a sleeping Nezuko. Izuku? The redhead asked confused. This is not the time for talks, tell me, can you at least walk now? Izuku asked, somewhat seriously, as he looked at the pillar, who was surprised by the look the freckled boy was giving her. And no, I still can't move but, before he could continue, the redhead had been interrupted by Izuku. It doesn't matter, I'll distract her. Izuku said, then turned to look at the older Kamado and gave him a confident smile. This made the Kamado have a little encouragement. Then he stood up with effort, and without further ado, Tanjiro began to run with the Nezuko in his arms. Why do you let me run away with that demon? You know it's our duty to finish them off, why don't you let me finish her off? Shinobu asked, a little annoyed. You see, I can't let you kill that demon, since she's her sister. Izuku replied. Well, if that's the case, then I'll kill her with a poison that won't make her suffer pain, the girl said with a dark look. I'm sorry Shinobu-san, but I won't allow you to do that. The boy finished by putting away his sword, then standing on guard. If you want to protect that demon so much, why don't you draw your sword and fight? The girl asked, pretending to be calm. Izuku just smiled, then said. I don't want to hurt you, I wouldn't forgive myself if I hurt you, I'll just stall for time. He said it in an innocent way. It must be said that Shinobu blushed a little upon hearing that. Was he perhaps worrying about her well-being? It was a new feeling that was beginning to emerge within the pillar. I idiot, was the only thing the girl said, to launch herself to attack the green-haired man, who covered himself with the gloves of his suit. It must be said that Izuku asked Yorokodaki if he could make the gloves more resistant to the point that he could withstand cuts from the Nichirintos. At first it was difficult to get it, but in the end it was possible. The pillar continued to attack Izuku, who continued to block all the attacks. The fact that Izuku told him those words made it impossible for him to attack correctly. It was the first time that a man like Izuku told him that. Normally, Shinobu spent almost all day locked up in her clinic, making medicine among other things. Which meant that Shinobu almost never spoke to anyone. When the girl did speak, she mostly spoke to the female gender, instead of the male. And the fact that she heard those words spoken by Izuku, made Shinobu feel a new feeling that she had never felt before. 5 minutes passed in which the girl tried to hit the green-haired man, but he blocked them all with ease. While Izuku blocked Shinobu's attacks, he managed to see Kanao, who was jumping from tree to tree. Izuku assumed that she was looking for Tanjiro, so he was going to go towards the girl, to stop her, but before doing that, he saw a black-haired man going after the girl, only at a higher speed. Why aren't you fighting? Shinobu asked, almost screaming in frustration. I already told you, I don't want to hurt you, I'll just be killing time. Izuku replied with a smile. As Shinobu continued trying to slash Izuku with a sword, she made a cut that was aimed at the freckled boy's neck. Izuku, seeing this action, crouched down. Seeing this, Shinobu thought that Izuku would jump to get away, so she was preparing a blow to knock the green-haired boy unconscious, but before she could do her job, she heard some words. I have you. Were Izuku's words, then he lunged at Shinobu, knocking her down in the process, which made her let go of his back and both of them fell to the ground. It should be said that Izuku had wrapped his arms around the pillar's waist, forming a hug. Shinobu felt some arms wrap around her waist, turning red when she saw that Izuku was hugging her. When she noticed that Izuku didn't put any strength into the hug, she was going to break free from the hug to hit him and knock him unconscious. But before hitting him, she stopped, since inside her, she was telling her that if she hit him, she would regret it, so she didn't do anything. On the contrary, all she did was snuggle up better in the freckled boy's chest. You know, whenever I was feeling angry or stressed, my mother would always hug me. That was the only way she could calm me down. And I think this will be good for you. He said this with all his heart, and his words were full of sincerity and purity. Shinobu, noticing that his words were sincere and pure, simply blushed. I think it's okay," she said in a shy way. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, Shinobu was in her shy girl mode. Normally, Shinobu tends to have an outgoing and bold attitude when she's around people, but it seemed like Izuku was the only person in the world who could bring out that shy side of Shinobu. "I'm glad you understand, Shinobu-san," he finished, intensifying the hug a little. "After this, I will explain to you why I don't want you to kill that demon." Izuku only felt a movement in his chest, because the pillar had nodded at the freckled boy's words, but leaving that aside, Shinobu felt angry with himself for giving in to that hug. On the other hand, he didn't like the subject of killing Nezuko, since she was a hunter and for personal reasons, although deep down in his heart, deep down, he was too angry about Izuku caring too much about that demon. You could say it was jealousy if we could consider it that way. 3 minutes passed, which for Shinobu were the best, since it had been a long time since she felt that kind of affection. And although her sister's was incredible, it didn't compare to her sister's. She may be a girl with a bold and extroverted attitude, but that didn't take away the fact that she is a young girl with feelings. She may sometimes be cold or affectionate. But it was just a mask she wore, so as not to show that she also wanted someone to love her, protect her, and care about her well-being. And without Izuku realizing it, she was giving him what Shinobu wanted. But unfortunately that hug wouldn't last too long, as they were interrupted by a noise. Quack, quack, was heard throughout the forest. By orders of the boss, you are ordered to take Tanjiro Kamado, Nezuko Kamado and Izuku Midoriya to the headquarters, the crows repeated, causing the scandal that had been created to calm down. Wow, I think we got into trouble, Izuku said, stopping hugging the pillar, then scratching the back of his neck, embarrassed and red, since he hadn't realized what he had done. Relax, it's probably nothing serious, Shinobu said calmly, but inside she was a little upset, since they had interrupted a tender moment, if we could consider it that way. After that, Izuku and Shinobu met up with Tomioka and Kanao. Tanjiro was almost knocked out by Kanao, but luckily Tomioka had arrived to prevent that from happening. Although Tanjiro was saved, he was very tired, so Izuku carried him on his back, while Tomioka carried Nezuko's box, which also included Eri. During the walk, Izuku tried to talk to Tanjiro, so that he would explain how he had been in that state, but it was useless to ask him to tell him what had happened, since halfway there, Tanjiro fell unconscious. A few hours had passed, until they had finally arrived at the headquarters. Once there, they left both Kamados as well as the boy with the boar head and a crying blonde, to rest comfortably at the headquarters. Because they had arrived earlier than normal, there was no one at the headquarters. During the time they had left, Izuku talked with Tomioka about trivial things like fights, breathing and some doubts that Tomioka had about Izuku's power, but with the girls it was something different. Kanao-san. A purple-eyed girl spoke. At the mention of that name, the aforementioned girl had appeared in a blur. "What do you need, teacher?" the girl asked with a smile, but there was a hint of sadness in her words, something Shinobu noticed. "I notice you're sad, is something wrong?" Shinobu asked. "Well, you see, I can't believe you accepted the mission to kill Tanjiro-kun's sister. I almost hurt her emotionally, and I wouldn't want her to get angry or hate me," the girl explained with her head down. "I suggest you try to talk to him, and tell him what happened, then try to seek his forgiveness," Shinobu suggested, to which the girl just nodded. "Well, I didn't call you for that, but to ask you to tell me, what did you feel when you were near Tanjiro-san?" she asked, embarrassed to ask that question. Teacher, how dare you ask something like that?" the girl asked, embarrassed. "But well, you feel protected, you feel that this person will be there in good times and bad and that they will be with you forever," she explained, embarrassed. It must be said that the topic of love was not very important, since they were hunters after all, but this time, the topic could not be avoided. "Well, that's all I wanted to tell you, you can go now," Shinobu said with a smile. Kanao, upon hearing that she could leave now, disappeared in a blur, not wanting the others to see her face completely red from embarrassment. It must be said that both boys had something special, which captured the attention of both girls. Back with Izuku and Tomioka. "Tomioka-san," said a freckled man, who had an uncomfortable face. "What's wrong?" Tomioka asked. "Isn't there a bathroom nearby? I'm in such a hurry," Izuku said with a nervous laugh. The black-haired boy, upon hearing the broccoli's words, this one with a chibi face, pointed to a place, where a small cabin was seen. Izuku only thanked him, and then ran away. After 1 minute, Izuku came out of the bathroom more calm, but was surprised to see 7 more people, who were talking. The green-haired man had no problem being with more hunters, or so he thought, until the 7 people noticed his presence. Several had different expressions when seeing the freckled boy. Izuku, feeling the gazes of the 7 people, felt a little uncomfortable, so he went to Tomioka, who was lying on a tree with his eyes closed. Izuku approached and asked in a whisper, "Hey Tomioka-san, have you seen Eri-chan by any chance?" After asking that question, the black-haired man, without opening his eyes, answered, "It's in Nezuko's box. Don't ask me how they got in, because I don't even know myself," he answered, making Izuku look at him strangely upon hearing the last thing. "As long as he's okay, that makes me feel better," Izuku said, not paying much attention to what Tomioka said. After that, Izuku went to a shady place, then looked at the sky. "I wonder if everyone is okay and that my absence doesn't affect him too much. I just hope Kachan gets stronger, so he can defeat Shigaraki," Izuku said, in his thoughts, as he missed his friends, like Ida, Uraka and his teacher and Adel All Might, remembering that only made him sad. After all, his friends were special to him, plus he had taken the only power with which he could defeat the most feared villain in all of Japan. All for one. But on the other hand, in a way, Izuku was happy, since he was helping in another world. "Now that I remember, hadn't Chisaki entered the strange portal with me?" Asking himself that question mentally, Izuku sweated cold, and felt a chill run down his spine, since one of the most dangerous villains in his world was in this world. It was true that he already mastered the One for All, but the fact that 2 years had passed meant that Chisaki had also become much stronger, and this time it may be much more difficult to defeat him, and it may be a real challenge for the One for All. "Izuku-san," said a voice, making Izuku come out of his thoughts. "What's wrong, Shinobu-san?" Izuku asked, turning around. "We wanted to know why you and the other boy are traveling with 2 demons, if you are demon hunters." A man spoke, who had a strange mark on his right eye and carried 2 swords on his back. Shinobu was a little upset, since that guy stole the words she wanted to say to the green-haired boy. Izuku heard 2 demons. He got confused, since the only demon was Nezuko, but he remembered a certain girl with a horn. Izuku assumed they were talking about Eri. "Also, how the hell do you have lava breathing? Is it derived from fire breathing?" asked a boy, who was on a tree branch. Izuku got nervous. With those questions, it seemed that they had already discovered his lava breathing. Therefore, pretending to be calm, even though he wasn't really, the green-haired man responded, "The reason I have lava breathing is because..." Just then, Izuku went blank, since no one had asked him where he got that breath from. Clearly he wasn't going to say, "I got it when I went through a strange portal." Obviously he wasn't going to say that, since they would think he was crazy. Unable to answer the question, Izuku said the first thing that came to mind. "The reason why I have lava breathing is because I inherited it through a ritual," was the first thing that came to Izuku's mind, as he looked at the 7 people. "I assume you know who we are, right?" asked an expressionless boy. Izuku just nodded at the words of that expressionless boy, although he didn't really know who they were, since they hadn't introduced themselves, but to avoid any trouble, Izuku had to lie. "And you know that we know many people, right?" the same boy asked again, so that Izuku nodded again. "Well, then tell us how that ritual is done." This time the guy with the 2 swords spoke, but he had been interrupted by another guy. "Enough Uzui, don't you see that you're bothering him?" said the man, looking seriously at the now familiar Uzui. "Why do they ask that poor boy so many questions? Besides, I've never seen Rengoku-san so serious, he looks so cute," said a girl with pink and green hair, as well as a blush. "Better bring the other boy, he should know more," said the boy on the branch. At that moment, a man arrived, his entire face covered except for his eyes. It seemed that he works there. He was carrying Tanjiro, who was half awake. The man simply threw Tanjiro, causing him to fall abruptly. The next thing happened the same as in the anime, only when they asked him about Eri, Tanjiro denied that she was a demon, but they clearly didn't believe him. Poor things, they have to be killed, the poor things are hypnotized by those demons. Said a man with white eyes, who also seemed to be crying. I recommend that you don't go ahead Hajime-san, maybe they'll know something about Muzan. Said the boy expressionlessly. Tokido is right, maybe they are Muzan's spies, who have not been turned into demons. Said the boy on the branch. They were going to continue with their assumptions, when suddenly a boy with white hair appeared, who was carrying two girls, one in the box, and the other in the open air. The pillars who did not know about Eri were more than surprised, since that demon had not disintegrated with the sun. I recommend that you don't take things into your own hands, Sanemi-san. Said a black-haired man, who stopped lying on the tree, to look seriously at the now-known Sanemi. Why don't we just kill them? After all, we already have the spies, he said, then dropping Nezuko's box and unsheathing his sword, then pointing his sword at Nezuko's box. Wait. Don't hurt my sister, said Tanjiro, quite upset and worried about his sister. He tried to stand up, but it was useless, his body still hurt and he could barely stand a little. ! Don't you dare hurt her. Izuku shouted angrily. Kid, don't talk to your superiors like that, just because you easily finished off a lower moon doesn't mean you can talk to it like that, plus Sanemi is 1,000 times stronger than you. Said Uzui, who had a grimace of disgust at Izuku's disrespectful attitude. In fact, the insect pillar spoke. He possesses a strange power that allows him to release green rays. We do not have much information about the origin of his strange power, we only know that it is measured by percentages and that it grants him superhuman strength from what I heard. But what we believe is that, he is the only one who could fight against two upper moons and finish off both of them, if he used all his power, but it is just an assumption. Shinobu explained, making Izuku just smile at the girl's words. Have you gone crazy? None of us could do that, not even Yorokodaki could do that, not even Kawajima himself, who were considered the strongest pillars that ever existed. Said the rock pillar in disbelief. Shinobu was about to continue, but was interrupted by the wind pillar. No matter what you say, no human can release green rays, besides, if he had that strange power, that wouldn't stop him from killing them. Said the wind pillar with a psychopathic smile. Dad. Eri spoke in pain, as her hair was being held roughly. Now, if you'll excuse me. And with that said, the wind pillar buried his sword in Nezuko's box, and then, a feminine growl was heard. The place had fallen into total silence, no one said anything, you could only see Izuku with his eyes covered by his hair. Ha ha ha, what did you think of that broccoli with legs? Now the girl is next. The wind pillar spoke, then took out its sword from the Nezuko box, which was covered in blood. The pillar simply pointed at Eri, who was scared. Leave her. Izuku said in a whisper. What did you say, broccoli? The wind pillar asked mockingly. ! I told you to leave her, Izuku shouted angrily, then started running. It must be said that when Izuku ran, the green-haired boy surprised the pillars due to Izuku's sudden action. Except for Shinobu and Tomioka, but surprisingly, Uzui got in Izuku's way. Oh no! Said the girl with disappointment at seeing the stupidity her partner had done. I will not allow a child like you to disrespect us, he finished, to try to hit Izuku, but was shocked by the following. Izuku had dodged his blow, then taken distance, and surprisingly, Izuku was marked with some red marks. ! 1 for all, full cowl, 60%. Izuku said mentally. After saying that the red marks disappeared, and then he began to release green rays in large quantities. All the pillars who didn't know Izuku's power were shocked, even one person, who was watching everything from inside the headquarters, and in the blink of an eye, Izuku appeared in front of Uzui, and then said. ! Detroit smash. That was the only thing Uzui heard, and then he received a blow to the stomach, causing the sound pillar to spit out a lot of saliva and a little blood, and then he knelt down and held his stomach. What happened next was not good at all. Izuku moved at a speed that not even the pillars could match, they only saw a green flash. From one moment to the next Izuku appeared in front of the wind pillar, which was covered with his sword, but surprisingly, Izuku had disappeared from his vision. The wind pillar began to look for him with its eyes, just like the pillars, until by instinct, the wind pillar raised its head, seeing that a green-haired man was there. Smash! He heard the pillar of wind, and then received a blow to the head. The blow had been powerful enough to knock him unconscious. After that, Izuku fell to the ground, and then said. Never, ever, touch my loved ones. Izuku said annoyed. All the pillars were shocked, they couldn't believe that a mere boy had defeated a pillar with a single blow. Shinobu just looked at her companions in disappointment, as they had brought it on themselves. By the way, I forgot to tell you that he was able to seriously injure Tomioka-san with only 10% of his power, so don't imagine 100%, the girl said sarcastically, while helping to stop Uzui, who was still holding his stomach, and then calling one of her servants to pick up the unconscious body from the wind pillar. After things calmed down, the pillars decided to make another decision, seeing that they might have in front of them one of the most powerful hunters ever seen, and that he might put an end to the era of demons. Rengoku, seeing Izuku's potential, asked for permission to train him and polish his skills more than they already were. Until a person appeared, who was leaving the headquarters. Everyone knelt down upon seeing him. Izuku was confused, but still, he did the same. The person who had appeared was the boss. "Welcome, boss," was what all the pillars said, while Izuku, well, he was still lost, since he didn't understand anything of what was happening. The first speech the boss gave was about what they would do with Tanjiro and Nezuko. After everyone thought about it, they decided to let them live. With the condition that if Nezuko were to hurt a human, the punishment would be the death of Urokodaki, which had been offered some time ago. Tomioka had also offered, but he did it by instinct. Even Tanjiro himself had offered, but what they didn't expect was that Izuku would also offer. Shinobu, upon hearing that, refused, but it was too late, the contract had already been signed. But what they didn't count on was that if that were to happen, Izuku would give something that would help the pillars too much. Izuku would give the one for all. The purpose? Simple, Izuku would give one for all, so that they would have an advantage, and that the legacy of one for all would continue for generations to come. "Wait, how the hell will we know that the demon didn't hurt anyone?" said the boy from the branch. "You see, Iguro-san, they will do a test themselves," said the boss with a smile. "I'll do it," said Tanjiro, who tried to stand up, but was stopped by Izuku. "Let me take care of the test, since you're still tired, and can barely stand up a bit," Izuku said, to which the redhead just nodded. Izuku just walked in the direction of Nezuko's box, and while he was doing this, Izuku took off his right glove, leaving his hand exposed, which had scars. It must be said that the pillars were surprised, since even if they were simple scars, Izuku's were special, which is why they had doubts about what had happened to him to have those scars, but what they didn't know is that Izuku had more scars, only these were covered by Izuku's suit. As Izuku made his way to Nezuko's box, he grabbed a rock with his left hand. Luckily for him, the rock was sharp. Once in front of Nezuko's box, which was placed in one place, Izuku simply grabbed the box and took it to the exit of the headquarters, where there was a wooden roof that prevented the sun's rays from passing through. Izuku just crouched down, then touched Nezuko's box as if it were a door. "Are you awake, Nezuko-chan?" Izuku asked in a calm tone of voice. After asking that, the small door of the box slowly opened, and then, from it, a small Nezuko could be seen, who began to take her normal height, and although Nezuko did not show it, she was more than happy to see Izuku again. Izuku, without saying anything, made a cut on his right hand. Izuku only gave a small grunt of pain. At first there were three reactions. The first was Nezuko, who was upset by what the freckled boy had done. Nezuko just turned around to go to her box, then started searching and taking out several things in a comical way. Izuku just watched that in surprise. Literally, the box already had several things in it. After a few seconds, Nezuko found some bandages. Once she had the bandages, Nezuko approached Izuku, then took Izuku's right hand and began to bandage the wound. It must be said that Nezuko was making sounds like murmurs, but they sounded annoying, since she was apparently scolding the green-haired boy, who was apologizing for what he had done. The second reaction was Shinobu's, who tensed up at what the freckled boy did. She became alert in case Nezuko would attack Izuku, but she calmed down when she saw how the younger Kamado was bandaging his hand while scolding him. This made her laugh a little. The last reaction was from Tanjiro, who no longer expected that reaction from his sister, but that did not prevent him from being surprised by the hospitality that Nezuko gave. It must be said that the pillars were more than surprised, not only by the hospitality that Nezuko gave, but because she literally completely ignored the blood, since any other demon would have already done the opposite, but Nezuko was a special case. You see, she's not bad, instead she's a girl, who is willing to help humans, even if she's a demon, Izuku said, while stroking Nezuko's hair, while showing a Midoriya-style smile. This only made the minor blush a little, and without further ado, Nezuko hugged Izuku, hiding her head in the green-haired boy's chest, who upon feeling the hug, only reciprocated it. While this was happening, a certain insect pillar was staring at Nezuko witheringly. It seemed that her jealousy had manifested itself again. "So what are we going to do with them?" asked the animated pillar of fire, looking at his boss, who, upon hearing the question, assumed a thoughtful posture and then spoke. Is it okay for them to come to your estate, Shinobu-san? He asked calmly. Shinobu, hearing that question, could only answer. No problem, boss, you leave it in my hands. He replied with a smile.